Now, there are moves afoot in the Australian Labor Party to ensure that should they win government at the next election, they recognise the state of Palestine, the non-existent currently state of Palestine, recognise the Palestinian territories as a country. This is a big development in this area, and I'm joined now by Dr Colin Rubenstein, who's the Executive Director of the Australia-Israel Affairs Council. Good to talk to you again, Colin. Both sides of politics favour a two-state solution here, but the suggestions that Labor are going to change their position to actually get ahead of that and recognise Palestine. Have you seen this coming for some time, or do you think it might not happen?
Well, look, I think it's really up to senior Labor figures to clarify the situation, but my best understanding is that there's really no significant change in policy from the 2018 platform of the Labor Party. As we know, they've got this special platform conference at the end of the month, and the resolution that was added to the platform last year on this matter is effectively being incorporated into the platform. And the platform, is the platform as we've had it in the last few years is really quite acceptable. It supports a two-state outcome, which most reasonable people support, the right of Israel to live in peace with secure borders internationally recognised and agreed by the parties, and reflecting the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to also live in peace and security within their own state. In other words, it supports a two-state outcome. What's a bit problematic about that resolution passed last time, if read without reference to that platform, is it calls not just for a two-state, but it doesn't call for agreement between the parties. In other words, negotiations getting to that point, which is key. And of course, it also called for the next Labor government to recognise Palestine as a state. Now, read alone, that would be problematic, but read together, there's no real change. But the important point is to realise that if there was a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state without those negotiations, it wouldn't help encourage negotiations on the Palestinian side, but impede them and undermine the very outcome.
The point is, though, Colin,
the ALP seems to want a two-state outcome.
If it was an Australian Labor government, I understand your point, but it wouldn't make much difference because so many other countries have already done that.
Well, not really. Internationally, yes, but among Western countries, this unilateral recognition is quite rare. Chris, the real problem is that the Palestinians have been refusing negotiations with Israel for over half a decade, as you know, having knocked back 3 serious offers for a state alongside Israel. So the idea of going for unilateral recognition of a supposed state of Palestine without any obligations on the Palestinian side just rewards that continuing intransigence and refusal to negotiate. But let me say that going along with that resolution was the proviso that it's up to a future Labor government to decide when to implement any recommendation, including that one. And of course, so the real test is really the wisdom and the responsibility of any future Labor government in terms of how it might apply those recommendations. So all up, frankly, there's not much change in the situation. What has really changed, of course, and should impress itself on any Australian government, including a Labor government, is the historic Abraham Accords, which we've seen in the last period. And this is dramatically historic and for the better, normalising relations between Israel and the Arab states. They opened up new avenues for peacemaking.
Well, they certainly have, and it's one of Donald Trump's greatest achievements, the role he played in that, and so many people overlook it. Thanks for joining us, Colin. I appreciate it.
And the Biden team supports the Abraham Accords.
Well, they support it. They didn't support him recognising Jerusalem as the capital, and they didn't think he'd get anything done. And now that he did that, they support it. Well, good on them. They shouldn't undo it.
They support it. You're right. Let's hope they don't squander the achievements that he had on that front. Very important ones, and hopefully, they can build on it.
Spot on. Thanks for joining us, Colin. I appreciate it. Colin Rubenstein there. I wanted to bring that to you because my mail is there are plenty of people in the right faction of the Labor Party, the sensible heads in the Labor Party, will resist some of these changes. It may actually be contested at that online Labor Party platform conference. So we will see. But saner heads might just pull them back a little bit on their unilateral recognition of Palestine plans.